Hello and welcome to episode 38 of First Chapter Reads, the podcast where I read the first chapter of an indie book in my Irish brogue and hope that you might just find your next favourite author. You may have noticed a slight difference in this installment of the podcast, as you possibly right now are looking at my big, ugly Irish mug. I do apologise for any offence that may cause you, but I have now ventured into the world of BookTube. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would encourage you to do so now and help me please our algorithm overboards. Today's book is Flight of the Corsac Fox by Blaise Ward. Blaise has a massive back catalogue of books and as well as being editor and publisher of Boundary Shock Quarterly magazine. Blaise was a storm spotter volunteer fireman in the 80s in college and a bouncer in a cowboy bar outside a Marine base in grad school in the 90s. Sure, he had plenty of stories, inspirations to tell from then. I'm going to cheat a little bit this week, as I often do. And I'm going to start in chapter 2 because I feel it gets a little bit more into the meat of the story. Imka Savadier, captain of Marshal Castilian, studied the display and noted that the surprise had been nearly complete, almost perfect, in that one Danamouche freighter had taken an early hit that appeared to have completely crippled the ship. The rest of the convoy and their escorts were maneuvering rapidly away, but freighters were slow and the smaller enemy escorts were badly outclassed by a forward cruiser, being mostly interceptor-sized warships. They would break soon and flee, which left Imka with the problem, or rather an opportunity. He left his first officer in command next door for now, and taken the operation space across the hall from his office. Better later if this looked like it was formal rather than personal. Dimka didn't like Ensign Fortier, and there wasn't a damned thing he could do about it. Not when the man's father was a dangerous party operative, who could ruin careers easily enough with the word whispered in the right ear. Nobody in Dimka's family had ever joined the Industrial Protectors Party. The Navy was an apolitical organisation, or, rather, all the politics were internal. The party generally left them alone, even at this level. It was the flag officers who had to deal with interlopers asking stupid questions. But Dimka knew that Fortier was a spy, an agitator, sent to report on his ship. Dimka Savatier wouldn't have it, and Danamouche had given him the perfect opportunity to rid himself of this annoying puppy. The patch chimed and Dimka pushed a button to open it. Ensign Fortier stepped in and came to attention, breathing a little heavy, as if he'd run here from midship. He probably had. Always competing, that one, always trying to make other officers look lazy and slack by comparison. Fortier had no understanding of how tightly aligned Dimka's crew was, how well he had trained them. For now he studied the young man. 185 centimeters, but only 70 kilos. Tall and skinny, but who would grow into those shoulders in another decade and a half? Closely trimmed black hair that looked like it would curl if allowed to grow. Long arms, long torso, narrow waist, long legs. Ethnically, Dimka placed him in the historical category called Turkic. Those dark eyes were staring at a spot on the wall above Dimka's head. Better the man was already in his life suit, with the helmet hooked up to his hip and immediately ready for a breach, as suited his current responsibilities in damage control. There was no way in hell Dimka was letting that dangerous spy in his bridge without a direct order he couldn't ignore. At ease, Ensign, Dimka ordered now, watching the man snap precisely into a new stance. Yes, too close to school, with all that marching and training, to immediately obey orders. Good. Lieutenant Dupois is on medical report duty, with some bug, Dimka informed the young spy. One of the enemy ships has surrendered after taking damage, but the rest of the convoy is currently evading, en route to fleeing entirely. He paused there, but the young man remained silent, just a slight nod of acknowledgement. It was a shame that Dimka hadn't been able to shape the pup when he'd first come out of school. Then you might be able to trust him today. Pity really, as those connections could have been quite useful later. We expect the rest of the convoy to recharge their variable pulse spatial generators quickly enough and turn to escape us, Dimka continued. Danamush tactical procedures, however, generally require a convoy such as this to remain coherent for at least 3 engagements. So when they spin up their warp bubbles, we will be able to track their pulse wake and eventually overhaul them. From there, we can force them back out of warp. I must leave somebody behind to take charge of the damaged freighter. 48, that's you. As it is a small vessel, I will send one engineer and a small security team to accompany you. You will take command of the vessel and make for the nearest friendly port. Once there, you'll make arrangements to return to base, at which point we should have returned with most of the convoy in tow, and you can return to duty aboard Marshal Castilian. Questions? He could see 10,000 in Fortier's eyes, but most of them got discarded while Dimka watched. Then the realization that he was being functionally abandoned to his fate crept in. Again, discarded in an instant. Our kid. Too bad, really. He could have been something, had Dimka gotten to him first. 2 birds, 1 stone. Fortier would be out of his hair for a considerable amount of time, especially since that freighter had taken a hit through the bridge that might have decapitated the vessel. When the puppy got back, 6 months might have elapsed, perhaps a year. Maybe his damnable father would find a new assignment for the young hero, assuming he came back covered in glory, and Fortier could be transferred elsewhere. Anywhere. Or maybe Dimka would be lucky, and he'd never come back. No questions, sir, Fortier finally spoke. Will we have a shuttle to board? Negative, Fortier. Dimka smiled cruelly. The ship is too small to have a bay, and I'll need them later with the larger ships. You and your team will jump across when Marshal Castilian maneuvers close enough, at which time I expect we'll go immediately to Pulse Wake. Chase. Dismissed. He watched the spy nod deeply, come to attention, and march out of the room, like Dimka Savadier was the headmaster issuing discipline and rewards, not all that far off. Okay, I think that gave you a good idea of what's going to be going on in Flight of the Corsac Fox. It's the first book in a series, and nice big chunky book. I'm looking forward to getting into the rest of it, and I hope that you will too. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of First Chapter Reads. I would encourage you to check out The Space Opera by Blaze, and while you are at it, you could also have a look at my latest release, Cold Blooded. I put the links in the description area for your convenience. I would, as always, ask that if you do read any of these indie books, please leave a review. Indie books only get noticed through reviews, and if you find a treasure out there, make sure you share it with the world. If you enjoyed today's reading, I would love to hear from you in the comments, and I'm sure it would mean the world to Blaze to hear what you thought. Don't forget to subscribe and share as well. Thanks so much. See you next time.